You never truly believe it's going to happen to you. You hear accounts from others, quiet confessions, unsettling stories passed around like urban legends meant to warn, yet you hold on to the idea that your own world is protected, that it's somehow immune. That illusion shattered for me the morning Lucinda rolled her suitcase toward the front door. The day was bright and warm, sunlight spilled across the floor from between the curtain slats, and the comforting aroma of fresh coffee still lingered in the room. She looked back at me, adjusting her bag strap, and there it was, something unfamiliar. After 5 years of marriage, I caught a glimpse of something different in her. There was a pause behind her smile, a quiet searching in her eyes, like she was expecting words I didn't know I needed to say. At the time, I brushed it off. Probably just pre-trip nerves, I told myself. She'd been planning this getaway with her best friend Miriam for months, a brief escape somewhere sunny, a break from the routine stress. I had no reason to be suspicious. So I gave her a kiss, told her to enjoy herself, and watched her step out the door. If only I had seen what was coming. The warning signs had appeared weeks before. I'd been under the weather, just a minor bug. A bit of fever, sore throat, fatigue. Nothing alarming. I carried on working, pushing through the tiredness. But then Lucinda caught it too, and oddly, it seemed to affect her more severely. I remembered how she wrapped a blanket tight around her, slowly sipping her honey tea, her face drawn in mild annoyance. "I can't believe you gave this to me," she had muttered, looking at me like I'd cursed her. I laughed and teased, "Consider it a going-away gift before your trip." She rolled her eyes, but I noticed something more lurking in her expression, something that made me uneasy. "I just hope I'm better by the time we leave. Miriam's going to kill me if I have to cancel." I told her not to worry, reminded her she always recovered fast. And sure enough, she did bounce back after a few days. But now, thinking back, I wonder if she was already hiding secrets, already making choices that would unravel everything. That morning, as her departure loomed, I woke up with a strange weight in my chest. I couldn't explain it, just a nagging unease. I assumed it was because I'd miss her, even if it was only for a short while. She moved quietly through the house, gathering the last of her things. I watched her fingertips pause over her clothes, watched her double-check her phone, hesitate before sealing up the suitcase. I should have asked if something was wrong. Instead, I kissed her forehead, told her I loved her, and walked her to the door. Her smile in return wasn't warm. It didn't settle my worries. And then she left. I had no idea that the next time I saw her, our life, our entire marriage, would be changed beyond recognition. The first few days without Lucinda didn't raise any red flags. I slipped into the usual rhythm: work, home, reheated meals, idle phone scrolling while the television filled the silence. We'd spent time apart before, this trip wasn't out of the ordinary. But even as I tried to convince myself everything was fine, something felt off. A subtle but persistent discomfort lingered, rooted in the memory of her hesitating before she left. I chalked it up to loneliness. She sent updates from her vacation, pictures of beaches, snapshots of her and Miriam lounging with colorful drinks by the pool. She looked happy, unbothered. Still, something small and insistent tugged at the edges of my thoughts, a whisper of worry I couldn't quite ignore. Then came the third night, and everything shifted. Lucinda had always been the type to stay up late. Even when she was away, she'd send messages well past midnight, funny things she saw, quirky observations, at the very least a short, "Good night, love you." But that night, my phone remained silent. I sat waiting, watching, expecting the familiar buzz. Nothing. I told myself there had to be a reason. Maybe she was worn out. Maybe the cocktails had hit harder than expected. Maybe the hotel Wi-Fi was weak. All logical possibilities, yet none eased my mind. When I woke the next morning, there was a single message: "Sorry, went to bed early. Long day. Love you." It felt cold, out of character, distant in a way that made my chest tighten. I should have asked what was wrong. I should have pushed for more. But I told myself I was being paranoid, let my doubts fester quietly. I had no idea that by the time she returned, everything I believed about us would be broken. The days that followed felt like watching a storm creep closer. From a distance, everything seemed fine. Lucinda kept sending me pictures and short updates about her trip, but I could feel something had shifted. She used to be someone who shared everything: funny signs, long rants about her day, every stray thought sent my way. Lately, everything coming from her felt rehearsed, as if she was carefully saying just enough to keep me from digging deeper. Messages like, "Spent the day at the beach. Water was amazing. Grabbed dinner at this cute seafood spot. Delicious. Heading to bed now. Love you," became the norm. The content wasn't alarming. It was the absence of real emotion. The things she didn't say, that unsettled me. I tried calling her a few times, but she never answered. Instead, I'd receive a delayed text an hour later with a reason why she couldn't talk. Sorry. Just got out of the shower. Missed your call, was out with Miriam at the bar. Phone died. Just saw this now. It was strange. She had never been the type to ignore my calls. If anything, she used to flood my phone with messages and check-ins. Now, it was as though she was actively avoiding the sound of my voice. Then something happened that made my stomach twist. It was close to midnight, and I had just crawled into bed when my phone buzzed. Hoping it was Lucinda, I reached for it immediately. But it wasn't her. It was Miriam. Hey Orson, Lucinda said she called you earlier. I think she mixed up the time, though. We were out and she was a little tipsy. Hope you two got to talk. Night. My entire body went cold. Lucinda hadn't called me at all. I kept staring at that message, reading it over and over, trying to wrap my head around what it meant. If Miriam truly believed Lucinda had spoken to me, then that could only mean Lucinda had told her she did. Which meant she had lied. She had made up a story to cover something. What? I didn't know. But the dishonesty hit hard. I wanted to brush it off, convince myself it was a simple mix-up. Maybe Miriam misunderstood. Perhaps Lucinda intended to call and just forgot. But deep down, I couldn't lie to myself. Something didn't sit right. I lay there the rest of the night, eyes fixed on the ceiling, my thoughts spiraling. I kept replaying the image of Lucinda the day she left. That lingering look like she had something to say but stopped herself. As if she already knew what was coming. I didn't sleep. Not even a little. My body ached with fatigue. But my mind refused to rest. Every thought led to another, each more unsettling than the last. Why would she fabricate a call? Why would she mislead Miriam? Was there something she was hiding? Or was this just an unfortunate series of miscommunications? I told myself to stay calm. I convinced myself that once she was home, everything would become clear. But deep down, I already knew the truth didn't look anything like clarity. The next morning, I stared at my phone for what felt like forever before deciding to run a small test. I sent her a short message. Good morning. Hope you slept okay. Call me when you can. I'd really like to hear your voice. Then I waited. 1 hour. Then 2. Eventually, a reply arrived. Sorry. Just woke up. Was out late with Miriam. We'll call soon. But the call never came. The day dragged on. I tried everything to occupy myself. Cleaning, jogging, even putting on a movie. But my phone never left my side. Every buzz sent a jolt through me, only to be followed by disappointment. By evening, my patience was gone. I called her. The call rang twice, then straight to voicemail. I tried again. This time it rang longer before redirecting to the automated message system. I didn't leave a voicemail. Instead, I typed out another message. Lucinda, what's happening? Why won't you answer my calls? Minutes passed, then hours. Finally, my phone vibrated with a response. I'm not avoiding you, just busy. Relax, Orson. That word, relax, ignited something in me. I had never been the controlling, possessive partner. I always supported her independence, never questioned her when she spent time with friends. I trusted her completely, but this version of her, distant, dismissive, cold, was not the woman I knew. I had 2 choices. I could ignore my instincts and wait for her to come home, or I could confront the situation head-on and search for the truth myself. My fingers hovered over the screen. Finally, I made a choice. I called Miriam. She picked up on the second ring, sounding upbeat and completely unaware of the storm I was caught in. Hey, Orson. How are you? I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey, just checking in. How's the trip going? It's been wonderful. So refreshing to take a break. I'm sure Lucinda's already filled you in on everything. I hesitated before replying. Yeah, she's been a little busy. Miriam laughed lightly. Yeah, we've barely stopped moving since we got here. I think she's been texting you late at night, right? My heart sank. Late at night? That wasn't true. Lucinda's messages had been few and far between, brief and cold. And now, here Miriam was, giving me an entirely different picture. I forced a chuckle. Yeah, she's just been kind of short with me. Probably just tired. Oh, totally, Miriam agreed easily. She barely had a minute to call you yesterday before we went out. My grip on the phone tightened. Lucinda hadn't called me yesterday. Not even once. Blood rushed in my ears, and I struggled to steady my breathing. Right? I said carefully. Can you remind me where you two ended up going last night? There was a short pause, barely a second, but it was enough. Caught it. Oh, we ended up going to this small bar not far from the hotel. Nothing wild or fancy, just a quiet little spot, she said. Her voice had that forced casualness, like she was trying too hard to make it sound ordinary. I inhaled slowly, trying to calm the uneasy feeling rising inside me. That sounds like a good time, I replied, trying to keep my tone light. Was it just the two of you? There was a noticeable pause before she answered. Yeah, just us girls. It was a lie, I didn't need any proof. The moment she said it, I felt it in my gut. The way her voice wavered ever so slightly. How quickly she spit out the words. It didn't add up. I tightened my jaw as my thoughts spun out of control. If Lucinda hadn't been with Miriam all night, then where had she gone? And more importantly, who had she been with? I forced myself to wrap up the call before I lost control. I thanked Miriam, told her to enjoy the rest of her trip, and hung up the phone. For several minutes, I just sat still, staring at the screen in my hand as my heartbeat thundered in my ears. Then I did something I never imagined I'd have to do. I flipped open my laptop and logged into our phone account. I navigated to the call logs and searched for Lucinda's most recent outgoing call. It hadn't been to me. It was an unfamiliar number. And she hadn't called it just once. She had dialed it repeatedly, every single night since she had left. My eyes locked on the screen, the truth slowly sinking in and squeezing the air from my lungs. This wasn't some one-time call. It was a pattern. Night after night, at odd hours, never when I was awake. Lucinda had been calling that same number. A mix of emotions surged through me. Anger, fear, disbelief. My entire body went cold as I counted the entries. 5 calls. No 6. And each one had lasted longer than a few minutes. I dragged my hand through my hair, fingers trembling. My instinct was to call her immediately, demand an explanation, force her to come clean. But I hesitated. If she'd been dishonest with me all along, what were the chances she would suddenly open up and tell me the truth now? I needed a plan. I needed to think this through. I copied the number and started searching online. Maybe it belonged to a business, a restaurant, a hotel, something innocuous. Anything but what my gut was telling me. But there was nothing. No listings. No social media links. Not even a name. It was completely anonymous. Which only pointed to one thing. It was a private number. Personal. It belonged to someone she didn't want me to know about. I leaned back in my chair, struggling to breathe. The room around me felt tighter, smaller. The walls, the decorations, even the smiling photos of us. It all seemed artificial now. Like the world I thought I knew had been rewritten without my permission. I was faced with a choice. Wait until Lucinda returned. Act like everything was fine. Let her pretend that nothing had changed. Or take matters into my own hands and dig for the truth. I picked up my phone and stared at that number again. My thumb hovered over the call button. 1,000 questions raced through my mind. Who would answer? What would they say? Taking a steadying breath, I pressed the button. The line rang once, then twice, a third time, and then, hello. It was a man's voice. I froze. I had mentally prepared myself for all sorts of possibilities. A woman, a misdial, maybe no answer at all. But I wasn't ready for this. Not a man picking up my wife's late-night calls. My mouth went dry. Still, my voice came out more composed than I felt. Yeah. Who am I speaking to? There was a brief silence. Then a quiet chuckle. Depends. Who's asking? My stomach dropped. His tone was cocky, arrogant, even filled with the kind of confidence that only someone knowingly stepping over the line would have. In that moment, I knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't innocent. This was something else entirely. I clenched my jaw. You've been talking to my wife. Who exactly are you? No response. Then a low laugh, and the line went dead. He hung up. I stared at my phone in disbelief, my hands trembling. This couldn't be real. Lucinda had been calling another man, night after night, while she was supposed to be enjoying her vacation, while she was ignoring me. And now that same man had just laughed in my face. The betrayal hit me hard, like a punch I didn't see coming. My breath became uneven, and I could feel my pulse racing. I could have called her right then, unleashed everything I was feeling, demanded answers. But I didn't, because I wasn't ready to confront her with just suspicions. I needed facts. I needed something undeniable. Because if I was right, if what I feared most was true, then Lucinda hadn't just been dishonest. She was hiding something much more serious. I gripped my phone, knuckles turning pale as the pressure built. My thoughts spun, my chest felt like it was caving in. I replayed everything, trying to find the moment I'd missed the signs. I had never been the type to snoop. I had trusted her completely. Never once questioned her excuses, her trips, her late nights. And now? Now I felt like a naive fool. A trusting idiot who had let it all happen without seeing it. I had to know for sure. Hands still unsteady, I reopened the laptop. If she had been calling that man night after night, there had to be more text messages, emails, social media interactions. Something that would confirm what I already suspected. I logged into our shared phone account once more and scrolled through her call history. What I found only made things worse. Not only had Lucinda been contacting that number every single night, but the duration of those calls was increasing. The first night, their conversation barely lasted 8 minutes. On the second, it stretched to 15. By their final call, she had been on the phone with him for nearly 60 minutes. A full hour. 60 minutes spent whispering in the dark, laughing softly, sharing. What exactly? Secrets? Hopes? Dreams? The thought turned my stomach. I slammed the browser shut and leaned back in my chair, pressing my hands to my face in frustration. This couldn't be all there was. I couldn't just sit around and wait for her to return acting like nothing had happened. I needed more than suspicion, I needed evidence. So, against everything I believed in, I did something I never imagined I would. I opened her social media accounts. Lucinda wasn't the type to overshare online, but she did maintain an Instagram profile mostly filled with travel snapshots and the occasional selfie. As I scrolled through her recent posts, everything looked normal. Sunny beaches, a few fancy cocktails, a candid of Miriam laughing during dinner. Nothing raised red flags. But then I clicked on the tagged photos section. That's where everything changed. My heart sank. There was a photo I hadn't seen before, not on her page, and not uploaded by Miriam either. It came from someone completely unfamiliar. A man. I tapped on his profile. His name? Graham Monroe. His account was public, showing off snapshots of high-end beaches, gourmet meals, and luxury hotel stays. And right there, in the center of his feed, was a picture that made my blood run cold. Lucinda. She wasn't alone. She sat at a bar, holding a drink, head tossed back mid-laugh. Beside her, leaning in just a touch too close, was Graham. My insides twisted as I studied the photo. The way their eyes met, the subtle position of his arm on the bar between them, it was more than friendly. It was undeniably intimate. But what hit the hardest was the caption beneath it. Some nights are unforgettable. I stared at the words, a wave of fury blurring my vision. She had never mentioned him. Not once. Not even a hint that someone else had joined them on the trip. I clicked through his feed. Graham had been sharing posts all week. Some were generic, scenery shots, resort lounges. But others featured Lucinda. In one, she was lounging by a poolside cabana wearing a bikini I didn't recognize, sipping on a tropical drink. Graham stood in the background, grinning. In another, she was on a boat, wind tangling her hair, laughing at something he'd said. But the one that broke me was taken just the night before, a romantic dinner setting, candlelight casting a warm glow over their faces as they leaned close to each other. Her hand rested lightly on his. I clenched my jaw until it ached. This wasn't a casual meeting or a harmless conversation. This was deliberate. This was real. And now I had proof. A cold, deliberate anger settled into my chest. Not the kind that makes you explode, but the kind that sharpens your focus. Makes you calculate. Lucinda was still away, completely unaware that I had uncovered everything. Soon, she'd be walking back through that door, expecting the same welcome she'd always gotten. But what she'd find instead was someone changed. I didn't close my eyes that night, not for a second. My thoughts chased themselves in endless loops. Every late-night whisper, every smile in those photos, every subtle clue I had chosen to ignore, they all made sense now. Lucinda hadn't just been dishonest. She had been emotionally somewhere else entirely. And I had the evidence to prove it. Sitting in the dim light of our bedroom, only the glow from my laptop cutting through the dark, I looked around the space that used to feel like home. The bed felt emptier than ever, but not in a painful way. More like clarity. Like relief. I had to stay 2 steps ahead. If I jumped the gun, she'd turn it around. She'd spin lies, manipulate the story, make me question my own sanity. I couldn't give her that power. So I dug deeper into Graham Monroe's account, desperate for anything to solidify the gut-wrenching truth. His online presence reeked of wealth, designer watches, high-end cars, private jets, and women, dozens of them. But something about his pictures with Lucinda stood out. The way he gazed at her, the way she smiled back. It wasn't casual. I scanned the comments below each post, most from friends sharing inside jokes or compliments I didn't understand. But one comment under the dinner photo made my blood freeze. A user named Oliver G. had written, "You finally got her, huh? Knew she wouldn't be able to resist forever." And Graham's response? "Patience pays off, my friend. This trip was worth every second." Every second. My hands balled into fists, fingernails digging into my palms. I couldn't take any more. I slammed the laptop shut, forcing a deep breath into my lungs to calm the rising storm inside me. I wasn't someone who got angry easily, but this betrayal, it was pushing me to the edge. Lucinda had orchestrated this from the start. She had been speaking to this man before the trip, maybe even for months. And during that whole time, she had been looking into my eyes, whispering promises, telling me she loved me. And now, she was coming back now, expecting to walk into our home as if nothing had changed. I glanced at the clock. Her flight would land in 6 hours. That meant I had just that much time to figure out my next move. Driving to the airport felt like a dream I couldn't quite wake up from. The city outside my window blurred into streaks of light and motion, while my mind spiraled into chaos. Full of fury, confusion, and disbelief. I kept looping through everything in my head. The deception, the betrayal, and the sound of a stranger's voice answering her phone. Part of me had considered not showing up at all, just letting her catch a cab home to an empty house and discover the truth the moment she walked through the door. But no, I needed to see her face. I wanted to witness the exact moment she realized the illusion was shattered. The airport was a whirlwind of noise and motion. Travelers rushed past each other, dragging suitcases, greeting family, returning from journeys. I leaned against my car, arms folded, eyes fixed on the exit doors. Then I saw her. Lucinda stepped out of the terminal, looking sun-kissed and relaxed, like she had just experienced the most luxurious vacation. She noticed me right away and flashed a bright, polished smile. The kind of smile you wear when everything's perfectly fine. But everything was far from fine. I didn't return the smile. She hesitated for a second, adjusted the strap on her carry-on, and slowed her pace as she walked over. "Hey, babe," she said lightly, casually, like nothing was off. "Did you miss me?" I looked at her, the words I wanted to say clogging my throat. Questions screamed inside me. Had she ever loved me? Did she feel any remorse? Was it worth it to her? But I said none of those things. I simply told her, "Let's go." A flicker passed through her expression. Was it confusion or fear? She didn't ask questions, just nodded and slipped into the passenger seat. The drive back home was cloaked in silence. I didn't ask about the trip. I didn't mention Miriam, and she didn't offer up a single detail. Every so often, she'd glance at me, her hands twitching in her lap, nervous. She sensed it. She knew something had shifted. And as we turned into our driveway, she was about to learn just how deep that shift went. When we walked through the front door, the air inside felt different. Heavier, charged. Lucinda put her suitcase down and gave me a wary look. I could see the tension knotting her shoulders and the twitch of her fingers as she instinctively reached for her phone. She was expecting me to say something, to ask how the trip had gone, to bring up Miriam or maybe even Graham. But I remained quiet. Instead, I walked straight to the kitchen counter where my laptop sat, still open, the screen dimly lit. The Instagram profile I had been obsessing over for the past 2 days was still up, Graham Monroe's smug face looking out at us. Lucinda gasped softly. I turned to her, speaking in a calm, even tone. Do you have something you'd like to share with me? She hesitated, swallowing. Orson, I raised a hand, stopping her before she could go any further. Don't disrespect me by pretending. I already know. The color drained from her face. I watched her brain go into overdrive, trying to come up with a story that would lessen the damage. She shifted on her feet, searching for the right angle. I was planning to tell you, she finally said, her voice barely audible. I just didn't know how. I let out a dry laugh, empty and bitter. You were going to tell me? I echoed, shaking my head. When exactly? After you finished unpacking? After slipping back into our life like nothing happened? She winced. It wasn't. Wasn't what? I interrupted. Not serious? Not intentional? Or not supposed to come out? Her silence was louder than any words. I inhaled slowly, struggling to maintain my composure. I saw the pictures, Lucinda. I read the comments, the late-night calls. I heard that man's voice laughing when I asked who he was. Her expression twisted, maybe in guilt, or maybe in frustration that she'd been caught. I couldn't tell anymore. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. I gave a small nod. But you did. She bit her lip, hesitating. Can we talk about this? I know I messed up, but there's nothing to talk about. She stared at me, stunned, as if she hadn't expected that, like she thought I'd fall apart, demand answers, beg to fix things. But that man she once knew was gone. I had already made up my mind. I walked over to the small table near the entrance and picked up a thick envelope. I handed it to her. What is this? She asked softly. Divorce papers. Her breath caught. Orson. I've already signed them. I cut in. Had them prepared while you were away. Everything's in there. I'm not looking for a fight. I just want you to leave. She looked at me, really looked, and for the first time since we'd said our vows, she understood she no longer held control. No. Her voice trembled. You don't mean that. We can get past this. I stepped back. There is no we anymore, Lucinda. Tears welled in her eyes. Whether they were genuine or not, I couldn't bring myself to care. I felt lighter, freed. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe again. She pleaded with desperation, throwing out every line typical of someone who realizes too late that they've lost the one who truly loved them. But by then, I was empty. There was nothing left in me to offer her. Without a word, I walked upstairs, retrieved the bag I had already packed for her days before, and placed it quietly near the front door. I unlatched the door and stepped aside. It was time for her to leave. No, she whispered, her voice shaky and unsure. Her lips quivered, eyes scanning my face for any sign of mercy. Something, anything, that might make me take it all back. But I didn't budge. After a long pause and one last glance, she bent down, picked up her bag and stepped outside. I stayed by the doorway, watching her climb into her car, her face soaked in tears. She started the engine and drove off, disappearing down the street. I remained there for what felt like forever, staring at the now empty driveway, waiting for a wave of sorrow or a flicker of doubt to wash over me. But those feelings never came. Instead, a quiet smile tugged at my lips, because, for the first time in what felt like forever, my future was truly mine again.